Hello. Welcome back. Hey, I got something for you today, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Japanese Red Army, Palestinian terrorism, and also North Korea as a sponsor of terrorism. I agree, they're not very pleasant topics, but they are interconnected. And it's also going to show you that 52 years ago, Palestinian terrorists weren't into suicide bombing or killing. It wasn't in their charter. But three Japanese Red Army terrorists kind of changed that when they showed them the way. So let's get started. We're going to talk about the rise of the Japanese Red Army. So we got to go back to the 1970s, and there were all these global anti-imperialist Marxist sentiments. And out of this, we see the Japanese Red Army emerging as this radical left-wing group dedicated to armed struggle. And it was founded in 1971 by, of all people, a Japanese woman. Her name was Fusako Shigenobu. And their goal was to overthrow the Japanese government and establish a Marxist state. And what's kind of unique about the Japanese Red Army is their connection with North Korea, which really set them apart. In particular, it was North Korea's strategic patronage. So under the then leader Kim Il-sung, North Korea provided the Japanese Red Army with sanctuary, training, and resources. This was all of a calculated move. So Kim Il-sung saw the Japanese Red Army as a tool to further North Korean revolutionary ambitions. And training camps in North Korea, they successfully hardened these Japanese Red Army members. And they also instilled this fierce sort of ideology, Marxism with Korean nationalism. So what was the impact of this North Korean training? Well, the North Korean training turned these Japanese Red Army guys into fervent revolutionaries. And you'll see that their actions would soon challenge global norms of terrorism and kind of reshape or influence these extremist strategies worldwide. Yes. So a little bit more historical context is, so the Japanese Red Army, they were inspired by other global leftist movements of the time. Connections like Italy's Red Brigades. You remember they also killed, I think it was Italian Prime Minister Aldo Moro, right? Germany has Oder Meinhof Group. And it's kind of highlighted this international solidarity amongst these militant terrorist factions. So their ideology was kind of a volatile mix of anti-imperialism, anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, and anti-Americanism, and a belief in armed insurgency to achieve this socialist revolution. So we go to the Lod Airport massacre. 52 years ago, so on May 30th, 1972, the Lod Airport, it's now known as the Ben Gurion Airport. It was bustling with travelers, including Christian pilgrims. They were from the United States, from Puerto Rico, there was one from Canada. And their journey intersected with kind of a brutal act of terror. So the attack unfolds. The perpetrators were three Japanese Red Army members. We have Kozo Okamoto, Takeshi Okudaira, and Yasuyuki Yasuda. So what they did was they concealed their automatic weapons in violin cases, kind of like Godfather. And they unleashed a deadly assault. So the airport turned into kind of a scene of horror as they used both bullets and grenades, and they struck down on innocent people. The weapons deployed, yes, they included automatic firearms. There were submachine guns, or whatever you call them, the Czech-made CZ-75, and also the Soviet-era AK-47, and the hand grenades. The hand grenades were Soviet RGD-5s. These were fragmentation grenades, right? So these weapons were chosen for their ability to cause maximum chaos and casualties. Well, you know, the AK-47, Mikhail Kalashnikov, right? I mean, it's kind of like the icon of insurgency worldwide. Kind of simple and reliable, and so it's kind of the weapon of choice for revolutionaries. Now, among the victims that day, there were 26 people who were killed. Um, there were Israelis, maybe 5 or 6, but a lot of them, most of them, were actually Christian pilgrims. They were going to visit the Holy Land, and they were killed. And there were about 76 people who were wounded. So, stories of the fallen, some of them included innocent people like Marianne and Donald Reese. They were from New York. And Carlos Irizarry, he's from Puerto Rico. I think they were all from the same church group. They all lost their lives. There were some survivors, and notably, there was one Israeli security officer. His name was David Robb. And despite being wounded himself, he was the one who managed to subdue the only surviving member of the 3 terrorists, Kozo Okamoto. And what he did basically saved lives, because that guy would have kept killing. Now, Kozo Okamoto, I think there's a saying, and it applies here, there's a special place in hell for a son of a bitch like that. He was captured alive, tried in Israel. I think he served a sentence, or it was a hostage exchange or something like that. I would think it would be with Hezbollah. And anyways, the reason why I say that is he lives very comfortably as a hero in Lebanon, and to this day. But in this attack, I talked about suicide. So on one, it did really kind of freak out their Palestinian terrorist partners, because at the time they really didn't do suicide attacks. And it was kind of like a suicide mission, topped with Takeshi Okudaira's own suicide attack. What? I said earlier that they were carrying Soviet-made RGD-5 fragmentation grenades. So Takeshi Okudaira, he blew himself up with a grenade. So at the time, suicide attacks were alien to Islamic ideology. Even the 1972 Munich Massacre at the Olympic Village in Germany, which was several months later in September, which was masterminded by Abu Daoud, whom I'll talk to later, it wasn't designed as a suicide mission. In the Munich attack, I think there were 5 Black September members who were killed, but they didn't go in there with the intent to get killed. So the example set by these North Korean trained Japanese Red Army terrorists, it really influenced Palestinian terrorists to adopt suicide attacks, and it really set a grim precedent. If you look today, we have, even in the Palestinian Authority, there is something called the Martyrs Fund. And basically, the family of any son or daughter who goes out there, bomb, firearms, knives, as long as they kill Jews, I'm going to just call a spade, as long as they kill Jews, there will be money for them. Probably more reliable than Lloyd's of London. And when we look at the Martyrs Fund, to this day, it's managed by Yasser Arafat's former faction, the Fatah faction. And that was also the faction where Abu Daoud rose to power as head of their military operations. Anyways, back to the son of a bitch, Okamoto. Every year, that guy, he attends an annual ceremony to celebrate, to honor his fallen comrades and celebrate. It really underscores the dark ideologies of the Japanese Red Army and also these terrorists. This year, I think he was adding special congratulations and had a big smile for his friends at Hamas. Yeah, sorry, it's kind of distasteful. Anyways, so really, his continued presence in Lebanon is really just a stark reminder of the Japanese Red Army's legacy. Shows all you people this dangerous mix of state-sponsored terrorism and ideology. Yeah. So let's go back to Abu Daoud and the Munich massacre. Abu Daoud, he was the mastermind behind the 1972 Munich massacre. He was also trained in North Korea. That's right. So his training was really extensive. It was guerrilla warfare, lots of ideology, indoctrination. And under Kim Il-sung, North Korea, again, they really saw value in supporting these international terrorists to project their power globally. And that training made Abu Daoud a skilled terrorist leader. And it was a key factor in him rising to the ranks, up the ranks, and heading Palestinian military operations. Now, when we look back at the Munich massacre, I'd say, yeah, it's one of history's most infamous terrorist attacks, again, orchestrated by Abu Daoud. So during the Munich Olympics, remember, the group they call Black September, sounds like an R&B group, but it isn't. It wasn't. They took 11 or 12 Israeli athletes hostage. And because of the botched rescue attempts, all of them died. That's right. Not all the Black September guys died, but I think maybe 5 of them did. The rest got away and were later hunted down. His planning, Abu Daoud's planning, I think it really did demonstrate his ruthless commitment. But it definitely, that was 1972. It was the year of terrorism, at least for these two groups. The aftermath of the Lod Airport massacre, I think, it definitely left a deep impact on Israel. And I think the way that Israel responded was that the heightened security measures, and you see it every day. I mean, if you ever taken an El Al flight, they, I think, are the world's, in terms of the vigilance they place on security, one of the safest airlines. And of course, you get this, international response and diplomatic fallout and condemnation by the global community. Actually, I'm not sure exactly if there was global condemnation. They may say that, but you still have an active Arab boycott, and they were sore about losing the war against Israel. But you had also diplomatic tensions between Japan and North Korea and Israel. I think there was Israel also tried to pursue something through the courts, or the victims also did, against North Korea, but really didn't go far. You can check out the archives of that. Even the trial of Kozo Okamoto kind of underscored these complexities that occur. But definitely, if you go, there are the memorials for the victims who perished in the Lod Airport massacre. I saw a few years ago, there was an interview of a survivor, and she was a little girl, maybe she was 4 or 5 years old. It was a BBC program called Witness, and I forget her name, I'm sorry. But maybe I'll put that below in the comments below. But that's it. I think that it was kind of an interesting story, because when we talk about terrorism or Middle East, the tropes about Middle East terrorists and suicide bombers, you just kind of assume, that's a tactic that they took on from the beginning. But if you look back, it wasn't the case. And again, maybe another kind of a stereotype or trope, but the Japanese Red Army, that's not the Japanese Army, but the Japanese Red Army, they kind of led the way. And remember, when the Japanese Red Army got started, they really, maybe it was more difficult for them, but they didn't really carry out their terrorist activities in Japan. There were hijackings and bombings and things like that. But I would say they really got their stripes. They made their bones on killing Jews in the Middle East. That was, and it's kind of, when I first was reading about this, I thought, that's weird. What are they doing out there? But you start looking at the, all the players involved, and now it kind of makes sense. So, as we speak today, 2024, Okamoto Kozo is still alive, but it'd be interesting. Japan has always put out these requests for extradition, but the chance of him being extradited from Lebanon is about as good as Japan getting Carlos Ghosn back. Neither of the two are going to happen. Anyways, that's all for today. Hope you have a really good week. Take care.